Welcome back to Fresh Corduroy. Today's guest is Hig Roberts, former U.S. ski team athlete, World Cup racer, and someone whose path through the sport didn't follow the typical script. Hig grew up in Steamboat Springs, Colorado, coming up through one of the strongest ski communities in the U.S. But he wasn't the early standout. He was the smaller, scrappier kid, forced to develop technically just to keep up. That mindset carried him through Burke, Middlebury, and ultimately onto the World Cup. In this conversation, we go beyond results. We talk about the realities of life on the World Cup, the pressure, the grind, and how quickly the joy of skiing can change when it becomes your identity. Hig shares how personal loss and internal struggles shaped his career and how he ultimately made the decision to step away. We also discuss his decision to come out as gay after his career, what held him back at the time, and how the response from the ski community changed his perspective. And then we shift to the business side. His time as a sports agent at Wasserman, what it really takes for ski racers to make a living, and what the sport can learn from larger leagues. This is a conversation about resilience, identity, and life after racing. Now, let's get some fresh corduroy with Hig Roberts. Hig, welcome to Fresh Corduroy.
Nice. Thanks for having me. Nice to meet you here.
Glad you could join me today. Let's start with the Hig Roberts skiing origin story. Where and when did you get started skiing?
Yeah, man, it's funny now. I have a 3-year-old or almost 3-year-old daughter, so I'm like truly, I think in the last, especially Christmas break when I was back home, my hometown Steamboat Springs, it was all kind of coming back to me. Um, Especially, now I live in LA. I've had a little bit of a sort of, I guess, break sabbatical from my skiing time. But yeah, I started off in Steamboat Springs, Colorado, Ski Town, USA. Probably a lot of people listening to this are very familiar with what growing up as a kid there feels like and means for young kids there. I didn't come from a skiing family necessarily. My mom is from Colorado native. My dad is from split time between Jersey. His mother's Bermudian, so he's like, living on an island for part of the year too. So not a skier, but was a hockey player. And when we moved to Steamboat after being born in Denver, it just kind of became part of all of us. My grandfather was a hockey player. And, my dad literally learned how to ski in jeans when he moved to Colorado and met my mom. Like, I think it was their second date. My mom invited my dad skiing. He showed up in jeans, and that almost ended everything. I wouldn't be here telling the story because my mom was so appalled by that. But yeah,
I have a similar story. I'll share it in a moment, but yes, very similar story.
Yeah, I mean, it's taken on a pretty funny sort of legend in our family, the story of my dad in jeans, because now he's the guy who skis every day. So anyways, yeah, just when you grow up in Steamboat, the school bus is bringing you to Howelson Hill. It's the only city park in the country that's a ski area. So the access is there, the culture is there. I didn't even start as a ski racer. I was in this program, Little Vikings, which you do cross country, ski jumping, ski racing, moguls. I think I even did a little bit of snowboarding. And then you make the decision like, okay, which one am I best at? So it was a very sort of natural process, but I do have a twin sister, an older brother and a younger brother. So I was sort of following my brother's footsteps, and then me and my twin were kind of always making decisions together. So skiing became the choice.
And she went into ski racing as well?
Yep. I mean, we're all like, God bless my parents for fielding 4 ski racers. Yeah, she was truly, of all of us, she was the best skier. I think until she was second year FIS, she was the best skier in the country. She ended up having a tib fib break that kind of changed a bit, but man, we always joke like, you go into her, went into her bedroom, and she just had all the blue ribbons. And then I was like the perennial like fourth, fifth place guy. I was a very small kid, very premature twin with my sister. And so, yeah, my sister used to beat up on me for, and I don't think until I was like 15 fists that I was faster than her. And then she went on to skiing college as well at Colby College. She was the captain there for 3 years. She was competed at NCAAs. So,
Okay, so at some point you started uh, surpassing your sister in terms of performance. I mean, how was it that you, so, I mean, it being fourth or fifth is not so bad a thing, but how did you persevere and continue to improve? And what was it that drove you to continue to pursue ski racing?
I mean, probably just like wanting to beat her. Even like my two best friends growing up were twin brothers, and I saw like, I feel very blessed and lucky that my twin was my sister and not my identical brother, because that competitive dynamic is so palpable. But it was definitely there. Like I wanted those blue ribbons. I think also, like I was saying, just being smaller, like truly like a foot smaller than everyone in my class at some points. Like it just and not all good habits are born from that, certainly. But I just was like a scrappy kid from the beginning, like just trying to like catch up and um, prove myself. And I think also really the benefit of it all, and something I don't think I fully realized until I was, racing at the World Cup or starting to get to higher levels and felt like I really kind of understood myself, is when you're like kind of deficient in size and, so ski racing is a gravity sport, especially when you're a kid, like you're J4 and these like you go to your first super G and it's like on a pancake hill. And I truly am getting dead last. But then the slalom comes and I'm up there. You learn like you're forced to learn technical good skiing because you don't have gravity on your side. So like it made me creative, I guess, in my approach to sticking with the sport.
That's an interesting way of looking at it. That
Yeah.
you're forced to adapt and adapt for the better as a result of that.
Yeah.
Call it deficiency, which is a poor choice of words, but we'll go with it.
Yes. Well, yeah, I mean, in middle school when you're short, it's certainly it's a tough thing
Yeah.
sometimes.
So fast forward a little bit, you make the U.S. ski team, and as you just mentioned, you started racing on the World Cup. How did you make that leap, and when did that occur in your career, and sort of like was there a mental shift with respect to making that leap and feeling of, I call it belonging, like you belong
Yeah.
where you are.
Yeah, I mean, I was, not to like, play a sob story or whatever, but like I was very different. Me making the US ski team was um, a very unique journey. I made it after I did my 4 years at Middlebury. And I would say like kind of a like growing up, I was so close so many years. Like when I moved out to go to Burke Mountain Academy, I remember right away, first races of the year, I I think I cut my fist points in half or something. It was like completely unexpected. It was at Sugarloaf. Those early insane races in February or in December. I never raced at Sugarloaf before. I just heard like legend stories of narrow gauge and like what can go wrong there. And somehow like, wearing a pretty high bib number, I ended up taking the win against a lot of college athletes, and no one really knew who I was, especially on the East. And I remember being like, it was a particularly Sugarloafy day. I'm just telling the details of the story because people who in Sugarloaf will love this. Like we had the first run and then we went up to do second run and it was so cold the lift broke. So we were like just waiting, like waiting. And then, like 3 o'clock hits, 4 o'clock. They're like, okay, we're gonna do the second run of this race tomorrow and then both runs of the next race after. We're like, okay, go up the next day. Snow guns were hammering the hill, and so they had to like delay the start 2 hours. It's classic. And then finally we got the second run going, and I, took, stood on top of the podium at the end of that whole fiasco. And I remember talking to my coach at the time there, Sam Damon, and I just felt like, oh, I've kind of arrived, and I can like this dream, because I truly always thought that I could make it that far. I just like had this kind of like burning, like, I think you can do it. Like I would ride up the Palma House and Hill and be like, I'm gonna ski World Cup one day. But things just hadn't really played out. Like just missing the D team, just missing the tryout camp, things like that. Where I was like, maybe it's not gonna work out. But that moment at Burke, like that December day in Sugarloaf, I think just like the result obviously helped, but just like the mental toughness, I was like, oh, you can do, you like, how to fight in these sort of arenas that are gonna, so
Yeah. No, those experiences are important. I think are very formative in an athlete's career. It's like, sometimes, it's obviously people bring skill to the table oftentimes, but, like having a seminal moment, like a breakthrough performance,
yeah,
cast the die, so to speak, in a lot of respects.
yeah.
And it's interesting that you have it at Sugarloaf,
Yeah.
and with good old Sam Damon, who is now coaching in New Hampshire somewhere. He
Yeah,
ran the Eastern region for a while.
yeah, incredible guy. Yeah, no, everything goes back to Sugarloaf. It's where I also like my first national title there. I love the loaf. Maybe that's my X factor, was the place people didn't want to go.
The secret sauce.
Yeah,
Yeah. No, I can't remember if it was a loaf or I said this just the other day, but my son raced a couple of years of FIS.
yeah,
Went back for an Eastern Cup Finals race in April, and it was either Sunday River or the Loaf, and it was warm. So sort of the opposite end of the spectrum from what you're describing.
right.
It's one of these spring days where it's super warm, and he's again, it's Eastern Cup Finals. He's starting a way back, and he's like, it's trench warfare. He's like, the ruts were, knee high, and I saw videos. They were literally knee high, and
Yeah,
it's like that was a waste.
and then the best part of Sugarloaf, then you get in the van to go back, and you're hitting like the frost heat, and you're like, it's just gnarly. But I love that. I miss that. East Coast skiing was, it's a true, those gems of details of those places is so vibrant still for me.
Yeah. You talked about going and racing for Middlebury for 4 years and then
Yep.
making the U.S. team. Did you take a gap year or PG year before leaving Burke, I guess, and going to Middlebury, or were you able to
So
step right into that role?
Yeah, so my gap year, PG year was at Burke. So I went to high school in Steamboat, where I grew up, and then was actually supposed to go to Burke after my sophomore year in Steamboat. I like applied and got in and was very interested, and then I kind of, I don't know, got a little nervous to go. Um, Twin sister was probably, I was like, am I gonna leave home? So I did my gap year at Burke before Middlebury, and really kind of once I was there, I was like, I probably should have done this earlier, but again, no regrets. And the cool thing at Burke for that year specifically, we had this insane group. It was like 8 of us in this PG group. I think 5 of the 8 went to World Juniors. 4 of the 8 either went to the US ski team, Canadian team, and then the other 4, we all went to Middlebury together. So we started like we were the entire freshman class at Middlebury. So it was this kind of this like 5-year program that we had built in just naturally, which was made Middlebury a really fun, easy transition.
I'm sure you're going with a group of friends that you've spent a million hours with in the van. I just had on Peter Dodge, the former coach at Dartmouth, and one of the things that he and I have talked about in the past is, where does college fit in the U.S. ski team or World Cup development path? And you seem to have used it to your advantage, and fortunately, for you, didn't have to take multiple PG years in order to be able to ski at that level. What are your thoughts in terms of, using collegiate ski racing as part of the development path for athletes to, the U.S. team and World Cup competition?
Yeah, I mean, I think like the great thing now is like I don't think it's seen as like an either or binary decision. Like if you go to, I think I think only one other David Shadonsky, Dartmouth guy, had done the 4 years in a row, then on to the, US ski team. Because if you're doing 4 years, you're 22, 23. I think I was 23 when I graduated. I have to make B team criteria. So it's like, it's a huge step. And now it's top 60 in the world. Um, so I think back then it was like, yeah, when I decided to go to Middlebury, I just missed the D team tryout. I wanted to take another PG year. And my parents were like, that's not happening. And deep down, I knew like I wasn't ready to go do the US ski team, Europe travel. Like I would just gotten clobbered over there. Like I needed to develop more. And I honestly, you know, look, I love school. Like I'm kind of a nerdy guy who really enjoys um, studying and learning from smart people and a diverse room of people. So like I felt like I kind of this instinct that school would be really good for me and actually help me become a better skier because I wasn't just going to be focusing on skiing. I was also going to be fulfilling this kind of need that I know is pretty intrinsic to me. Um, but like it's every skier is going to be so wildly different. And I think through my story and then certainly working in the space more, and as an agent later on for ski athletes, I worked with collegiate tennis players, collegiate track and field athletes. We came to these sort of decision points too of like, do we go full pro or do we go to NCAA? And at the end of the day, like that's a decision that everyone should make on their own. And I think kind of knows what's going to be best for them. And so I would challenge the athletes I worked with to be like, to really dig deep on that and be like, are you making this decision for yourself or is it for somebody else or some sort of version of something that you think you should be? Because there's no reason, we're seeing so many, I wouldn't even call them like unique cases now of very successful athletes who've either done the college route first and then made the transition, and not just skiing, any sport, but kind of just taking more ownership of their development pathway. And I think the US ski team too, in the way that organizationally, there's been a complete rethinking of how that should work, which has been really encouraging.
Yeah, definitely some changes for what I consider the better. I think it's more accepting of different development paths and different development rates, right? You talked about you were small early on, like they're call yourself a late bloomer kind of a thing, right? There are people who don't develop and don't things don't click until later in life, and there needs to be a pathway and an on-ramp for those types of individuals.
Totally.
A few things in there, like you talk about agent. But let's wrap up your ski racing career before we get to the business side of things. You raced on the World Cup. I think you had ballpark 40 World Cup starts. 4 or 5 years at that level. What was your thinking during that time? And I guess, towards the end, what made you say that's it for me, or why not another season?
Yeah, I mean, look, like getting to race at the World Cup and where I took my career was all, even in the moment though, when you're in it, you want more. Like just missing out on the Olympics by like the .03 that I did in Ultimate D or whatever, like these things that like were so big in the moment. It was all like unexpected. It was all cherry on top to be doing that. So in certain ways, I went into like my World Cup career just like kind of really free of like, well, this is cool. This is like bonus time, right? Like, woo. But that kind of evolved in different sort of healthy and unhealthy ways, I would say. Just trying to like that point in my life find myself, who I was personally, some of the struggles I was going through, um, you know, things I was dealing with at home. My little brother passing away during my first year at the World Cup level. Just, I mean, that talk about rocking sort of my perspective. Um, it I felt in that first year, and I went through a really tough sort of, I came into the season, made the Solden start list. I was skiing the best I ever had, like, behind, the time trial is just like blowing it out, like top of my game, like, wow, this is really going to happen for me. Like, and then it didn't happen that way. And I went through really, really low periods that season, like very low. And, then it shifted my mindset as I became really defensive. It was like, wow, this is my job now. This is how I make money. This is how I define myself. And I could feel the fun just like evaporate out of it. Like truly, like that kid who went in like, this is bonus time. Like, oh my God, I'm wearing the coat and wow, I'm racing Marcel Hirscher. Like what? It just like by February of that year, I was like, oh, this is not what I thought it would be. Um, Ultimately, there's a lot in there of just self-discovery. I was struggling with who I was as a person, my sexuality, uh, dealing with Murphy's passing and how that was affecting my family, what I was doing this for. I was able to find different places of why to get back out into my skis, like different motivations, which now in like perspective, because I've like lived, I don't know how many years has it been? Like, I guess almost 10 years now, 8 years now away from the sport. It's like different life experiences. Like, I truly can now go back and be like, oh, it's because I love skiing so much. Like, as a kid, like, and I don't know if I'll ever go find like a passion that felt so like natural to me of like getting on my skis was going to be like, the thing that I felt the most sort of comfortable with, the thing that was like my best therapy. So like that kept me going through the pretty rocky like World Cup professional career I had. Because it was, yeah, it was up and down. I was slalom skier, and then I was a GS skier, and then I was a nothing skier, and I was skiing with the US team, then I was, skiing with the Canadian team. It was just a very unique path, but I kept getting back out there. And then ultimately in 2019, I just like, I was at Burke, and it felt, I literally woke up and I was like, and similar to like right now, it was a couple days before my birthday, and I was like, I think I'm done. I think I'm done. And it was this really peaceful moment. I did the run. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't even tell my technician, which was not a good thing to do. Because he was like, what? And but I just said, I'm done. And I don't really know I can't pinpoint exactly like the reason why, but just like the way I kept getting back out there was like a very like affirmative feeling to follow.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You talked about you know finding your identity.
Yeah.
You came out as gay during your career, and honestly, you're one of the few alpine ski racers who have come out as gay during their career, and I don't know if others have come out afterwards. But what was that like at the time? And um, you know, I don't know that you can speak to this, but why aren't there more?
Yeah.
What is the I mean, probably bigger societal problems, issues that we can talk about there. But
Yeah.
what what gave you the courage to do that in the moment, and then what impact did that have on you and your career at that point in time?
Yeah, so I mean, I actually did come out after I retired. And uh yeah, it was nothing I sort of planned on doing in a public fashion, mostly because I was like, no one knows, who I was ski racing unless you are Michaela and Lindsay and Bodie and Ted, like, and many others to come. I know that as the sport grows here, like you're not really well known. Um But as I sort of separated myself from the world of ski racing, which I felt during the time was not ready to accept an openly gay skier, like it just, we didn't have it. And it didn't feel like, um, you know, it was definitely obvious there were before me as well, but the culture of it just felt not quite ready, or maybe I just wasn't ready myself. What I learned through that though, and coming out afterwards, and the amount of love and positivity that came back my way from teammates, coaches, competitors, you know, fans or whatever, and certainly like the my local communities, the youth programs, um, was that I shouldn't have been so quick to say the ski racing world isn't ready for openly gay men to compete at the highest level, because I kind of projected that on people because of my own sort of fear of coming out and being so visible like that. Um, I've worked and gotten to meet a lot of other gay athletes who have either come out after their careers or during and across many different sports. Men, women, all the above. And there's a unifying feeling of, um, while it would be so incredible and nice to come to your sport when you're at the highest level and just be authentically who you are and not have to worry about showing a different side of yourself. Um, because there's such little visibility, especially in male sports, of openly gay men, there's that fear of like being labeled, oh, you're the gay skier. And that sort of becoming the only thing people know you for, or becoming a sort of defining part of you that just kind of puts you in a box. And I don't mean that as like a cop out, but I think it's going to take probably, honestly, I'm going to be very candid, like braver people than I was able to be as a 21-year-old, or, you know, in my early 20s, to come out and say like, yes, I will be representative of, I will be the gay skier, and big deal. You know, it won't matter. It'll have equal weighting towards what ski company I ski on. I just wasn't ready, like emotionally, dealing with a lot. I just I wasn't, I had to get away from skiing before I could like understand what was, how was different and how to communicate that, if that makes
Right.
sense.
It does. Um, and you were going through a lot in those years,
Yeah.
right? So the various challenges compound on one another. It
Yeah.
doesn't make it easy for the person who's living it. So,
Yeah.
um, but
But I truly can't understate like how, and this is something I've tried to like take into the rest of my life, because sometimes I can be a little bit like reserved and skeptical, just naturally with new people. Um, is that people are better than I gave them credit for, especially like the people that were around me during those years. Like they would have embraced me. The amount of, you know, I had former teammates say things like, I hope I didn't like help. I hope I wasn't a part of the reason you weren't able to be yourself sooner. And I was like, oh my God, no, 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 no. This is not about you at all. This was my own like stuff I was trying to process. So like
right.
that was a beautiful thing to be like, wow, there really are people there that like they don't care. They want you to be happy. And it sounds cliche, but like I feel blessed to have like learned that, because it's changed my entire life, honestly.
Yeah. Well, look, as you now are a parent, you will at some point try and teach your child lessons that you've learned over the years, rather than have them to go through it. And you just kind of tell them, no, this is the way you should do it, or how you should think about things. And um,
Dude, listen to that though. I don't know if they ever listen.
I
Yeah.
can tell you that
Yeah.
they still resist, adopting the wisdom of their elders, and want to do things on their own and figure it out for themselves.
Yeah.
So
Circle of life.
exactly. But I think those lessons that you learned, and sort of the experiences that you had, I imagine played dividends, becoming a sports agent. I'm going to skip over the
the financial services career portion, but
Boring. Yeah.
uh,
It's fine.
that's
Yeah.
what I do on a daily basis. So we'll skip over that and go to becoming a sports agent, and I'll skip over grad school as well. But
Yeah.
being a sports agent and understanding the business of ski racers and
Mhm.
free ski athletes, um, I think there's probably a lot of curiosity out there about it. I'm certainly am, and there are those like Michaela or Lindsay who
Right.
are the or Marcel, if you want to include an Austrian, the top of the career, like have all the accolades, and then there's a lot, I imagine it looks like a hockey stick, and we can bring in
Yeah.
hockey in a moment,
Yeah.
in terms of the curve of people's earnings capabilities. What
Totally.
is describe the professional slash business aspect of being a ski racer or other, skiing athlete?
Yeah. I mean, it's fascinating. Like the transition into the agency part and, joining a large agency where, we represent athletes, and I think it was like 2,000, 3,000 athletes across every sport imaginable. So pretty like, um, and not something I was expecting to do at all. I moved to LA to go to law school, and I filtered into this like very, the timing opportunity was great, and I'm so grateful for it. But I hadn't being an agent was not on my radar. Um, but I quickly realized like, oh, I was doing a lot of this for myself as an athlete, given my unique sort of setup as a professional. A lot of it was, I mean, self-funding. Even when I was on the B team, I was backing. We still had to pay a fee to be on it. Um, I was doing so much of the stuff that I ended up doing for others, which was um, something I didn't formalize the process for in the time as my own self. But um, the ski racing and I would say any Olympic sport for that matter, or most that aren't in these big leagues of to be a professional athlete in that, like you are motivated probably not by money, like, and I don't mean that so crass, but like you have that goal that this will be sort of the time of your life where you're winning enough where you're able to maximize your earnings, and like this will set you up for the rest of your life, and you just can focus on that. But for most athletes in our environment, it is a chapter in the longer journey of your career, your personal life, etc. So going into it representing ski athletes, and I represent athletes, I represent a Formula One driver. Again, I represented athletes in various different sports. Um, getting to work with the skiers, and a lot of them, I mean, all of them were former teammates of mine, friends. I knew some of them when they were young kids. It was I felt very lucky to be a part of like this unique chapter in their life, and also with my perspective, like help them think about things um, that I probably either took for granted or didn't think about enough. So it was kind of developing them as like overall human beings. And uh, I also had a lot of success in filling the gaps that I think US skiers, um, you know, being at this large agency and having the resources that I did, and being able to go out to the marketplace and tell the world about skiers and tie them into different things that some of our bigger athletes were doing, and you know, um, grow the program with Red Bull, except things like that was really fulfilling, because any contract like that, or it makes a huge impact on a skier. Um, and what I found out too is ski racing is a pretty cool sport, and a lot of people just need to see more of it. And once they do, they're like, Jesus, like this is like F1 on a inverted hockey rink, with like 40,000 drunk Austrians and crazy people yelling. Like, where has this been my whole life? Like, I brought many people to Kitzbühel, and have told people, I don't care. Like, they're like, what should I do for skiing? I'm like, just eliminate any ideas, any framework you have right now, you're going to Kitzbühel, like, or you're going to go to Cortina, and then they go and they come back. They're like, this sport is insane. These athletes are crazy. They should be making more money. I want to know more about them. So just like talking them up more, increasing awareness is like so big.
Yeah. Well, I imagine for American athletes, it's a different conversation or a different pitch than it is for a European athlete, because the attention, I guess we talk about the attention economy these days, is focused on other sports. You mentioned F1, obviously, certainly growing a lot in terms of its prevalence and acceptance here in the U.S. market.
Right.
You've now work for the NHL Players Association, obviously one of the major professional leagues here. And it doesn't hurt that USA Hockey won gold, so I'm sure it brought a bit more attention. What's the pitch to presumably American brands, although you could probably sell an athlete to a European brand, for an American athlete, as opposed to Marcel Hirscher, who can sell himself in Austria and Germany and all day long?
Well, just pure numbers, like the sort of, I'll use a nerdy business school term, the total addressable market of a US based athlete is going to be, let's say, what is Austria, a country of 10 million maybe?
Yeah.
It's going to be 30x, right? So if you can capture, like, Hirscher might get, 50% of those attention, whatever. Like, and that's a pretty rough sort of mathing on it. But like, when you do speak to large companies, especially as the Olympics are coming around, which I think all skiers listen, like, it's like the freaking Olympics, like trying to bust that like cycle that seems to sort of constrain our potential and earnings. Like, if you can get the potential is much greater, and honestly, a lot of these European companies, and I worked with a European athlete, this Formula One guy who was racing in IndyCar. His grandfather actually was a silver medalist and GS silver medalist in the World Championships in Aspen in 1960 something. So very cool connection. But like, those European, in terms of like their marketing dollars going further and their endorsement dollars going further, like, they're actually all kind of looking at the North American market, be like, how do we penetrate that? So that's why it's like, athletes like Michaela and Lindsay, like, and especially Lindsay, like, and learning German and like things like that ingratiate her to the European audience, but they can transfer that back to her American. And I don't mean to be so like America rah like centric, but that's sort of the pitch with how we go about talking about U.S. athletes in sports that are smaller in our backyards but bigger internationally, is like trying to say, like, look, I know you want our market. That's where the eyeballs are. Right. That's where the sort of potential is. So it's a little bit of like re-engineering the
so you're basically saying, look, the sale is to call it European brands or companies that want better access to the American market, that again, to increase their TAM, total addressable market. And so take Lindsay, for example, who as that lore has it, intentionally learned German in order to increase her marketability. That helps again, increase her total addressable market, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, like, Red Bull's on that model. Like, they're from Salzburg. They're one of the most fascinating growth stories of not just like a consumer product, but like, they're a conglomerate, right? A media company. And they came, and now they're dominating the US. And
So let's take a US team athlete who is just stepping up to the World Cup level, like, just beginning to compete at that level. Hopefully they're making the cut. They may not be, right? That's where they are. do they have real income? I mean, what is their marketability? How do they get out there and make a living? Because there are quite a few of them who do summer jobs, doing other things, right?
Which I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. Like, I was a waiter my first year on the ski team in Park City at like a pizza shop. And I remember like kind of being scared to tell the trainers and coaches I was doing it but I was terrified. I was like, I loved the balance that I had created in college of like school and skiing. And then also I'm like in Park City for the summer training. And I'm like, oh, I can't just be in the gym 8 hours a day. I'm going to go crazy. So I was like doing these waiting jobs on the side. But look, I say this all the time to athletes, and when I sign them or when I'm approaching them, I'm like, look, the biggest differentiator is still going to be you performing. Like, everything you need to focus on, like everything that I could potentially do for you business wise, is going to come as a direct result of how you're performing on the hill, on the field, etc. So like, let's focus on that. Like, if you do, you're going to be rewarded for good results. And then that's sort of where your career starts to take shape. I think the explosion of social media and the ability for athletes to do storytelling and connect with fans globally in very real ways and also not real ways, like, has really helped sort of that maybe not global superstar who isn't getting those large contracts just based off performance, become relevant and earn money. You look at certainly what's happening in collegiate sports with NIL, some of these smaller sports, gymnastics, with some of the big top earners. And so that's been a huge shift of it all, and truly something fascinating for me to come into, because look, I mean, I wasn't a big name at all, but also my first year on the team, I don't think only probably half of us had Instagram. So it was really sort of this like seeing how this next generations, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, like they're growing up with these social media tools, and almost like an understanding that being on it, casing their lives, what they eat, everything, like that's part of the job now. Like, I had an 18-year-old that I worked with who's an Olympic medalist now in the Summer Olympics. I remember her telling me like, hey, I love social media. Like, this is part of my job. And I was like, wow, that's like good for you. And like, that's incredible thing to hear as an agent, because that's a huge part of how you help land deals. But I think that's really kind of what it's evolving to. And hopefully, there needs to be guardrails around it, obviously, because it's not all good.
Right.
But yeah.
I'm sure there will be a Senate hearing coming to a channel near you on that topic.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so I guess what you're saying is that brand new World Cup skier, particularly if they're, North American, is not making a ton of money off of sponsorship deals. They might be paying I don't know what they have to cover these days, but they're paying their airfare and their, other sort of associated costs and expenses, but they're not making a living.
Right. Yeah. I mean, my advice, like, I guess, like, I mean, that's definitely an important part of it. Like, and that's kind of where I stood a bit, is learn how to, like, first of all, it's an incredible privilege and opportunity to be able to compete at something you love at the highest level. So go for it. But also, you need to be, you have a lot more, there's a lot in your story and ability to connect with the outside world than you probably are giving yourself credit for. Because like for me, I ended up going out and, connecting with private sponsors. I was working with Cliff Bar, I was working with some like Lululemon, some large companies. And I remember I created a little athlete resume for myself and just started cold blasting it out there. And I told my story in different ways that showed me more than just my results. And I was completely shocked at like the response I got back with people who wanted to sort of join the team and help me out, and kind of cover some of those expenses. And I think, the US ski team has done a really good job with that too, with, the foundation, with a lot of successful people, whether it's through, very, very, corporate companies or philanthropy or different organizations who are fans of skiing and they want to help their nation's talent get to the top. So like my advice is to like figure out who you are, how to tell your story, and like don't be afraid to go out there and see how you can bring in people to your team. Because whatever, I mean, the worst that could happen is then someone doesn't respond or they say no, but like you're still going out there competing on the World Cup, and you'll find the right people eventually.
Yeah, there are people out there with far less talent becoming, Instagram creators and
Right.
amassing a huge following and an income as a result of it.
Yeah, totally. And if that's not for you, like, I mean, I am, like, look, if that is not what you want to do, or like, if that's going to detract from your performance, don't do that. Like, that's silly. You have to know where you put value, I guess, which is hard to do when you're young, but, yeah, being able to do a sport at a high level, like it's a true privilege, and it's going to be, the model will look different for everyone.
And when does somebody who's, again, let's say, has made criteria and is on the U.S. team, maybe they're only racing NORAMs or Europa Cup at the moment, but when do they start to think about, call it, building a team other than mom and dad to not only develop sponsorship opportunities, but like help them, like i.e. an agent? Like when are agents, on the flip side, become receptive to working with a client? Like where do they need to be in their career or performance level to make it worth your while?
Yeah, I mean, it's like, it's going to be different in every scenario, and sort of every agent has a different analysis for onboarding, and or sort of like what that could look like. I think, again, like the regardless of, let's just say the results are, if you're medal potential and you are, in a large sport like ski racing, I'm saying Olympic space, because skiing it grabs eyeballs during the Winter Olympics. And I think as long as you are, going to be in that sort of medal conversation for Olympics, there's a good chance that some of the large agencies are going to be looking at you, or you're going to be getting reached out to. Also, the U.S. ski team has done a great job of connecting athletes to people who can help. But I think I told this to my athletes too, like, garnering an agent is not a career moment, right? Like, it's not like, okay, I have an agent, and like now that means I'm professional. I'm like, click, boom, like tomorrow I'm going to be winning, because like agents are like, and that's like kind of the beautiful thing that I found my, like, going into an agency. I was like, oh, like I kind of get where we are just a small part of the journey, and we want to help you out, but like there's so much that's gone, like, before you assign, unless you are a prodigy and it's like this like aberration, like predictive thing, there's so much of your time and energy and love that's gone into like getting to where you are, and then this agent injects himself into your career all of a sudden. Like, that's great, but like, keep doing what you're doing, because it's working, and we'll be in the background sort of connecting dots. But I would say generally, like, tell your story well. Ask your federation, ask the U.S. ski team how you could get help getting more of this. And otherwise, just like focus on what you can control, and the rest will follow.
Yeah, what you're saying makes sense. I was introduced sort of the challenges a long time ago. Warner Nickerson, right, was...
Well, Warner, spent a lot of time with Warner.
I recall at the time he was ranked 31st in the world in, I guess, GS, and didn't make the U.S. team. Because of his age, and obviously traveled around Europe in a van. And he was active. This is, a while ago. I don't think there was Instagram. There was the internet, and he solicited donations. And that's when I was like, if a guy who's ranked that high is asking for money, I wouldn't say he was panhandling, but he was, he was out there. Clearly there's a disconnect between, and he can't, like you said, he can't train and go race and tune his skis, because he was doing that too, and all that stuff, and simultaneously put together pitch decks and talk to brands and agencies, ad agencies and like, and he can't do it all. And so that's where you start to need the pieces to put together. And you're right, like the agency is not going to, the sports agent's not going to help him, carve a cleaner turn or make the cut. But it helps him fund the activities that allow him to do that train. And as the question is like, I mentioned before we started recording, I've had Annika Hunt on the podcast twice. She won the overall title last year. Yeah. She, started her first World Cups this season. What's that?
Another Berkey.
Another Berkey. I've had a lot of Berkeys on, but without any intent there. And she's young. She doesn't have a World Cup finish yet. But like, should she be thinking about finding an agent to help guide her on the commercial side of things? I think Burke and Brass may have like sponsored her headgear for the season, but I can't imagine that's a huge, revenue producing opportunity there. Yeah.
No, I mean, look, like Warner, it's funny. It's a great sort of case study of like, if social media had been more of a sort of
a thing,
the guy would have killed it. I mean, I can't think of a better personality. I mean, look, like my hope is that, as a sport in the US, we can support people like Annika, like, and I've been in that position too, where you're like, I'm just happy to be here and get the World Cup starts. And like, you're starting to see like, hey, maybe I need to play things, and this is the time. Cause when you're starting to become pro, it's also the time where you should be starting to think about becoming more of a brand or whatever, or being able to like really maximize this. But there's so much going on that you're like, okay, well, I'll figure that at some point. So it is a hard sort of balance of doing all that. But I think my hope is that, within the US ski team, and I know they've put a lot of work into this, and like I've seen it evolve into incredible place. Like, they're helping these athletes with sort of that thinking and that mindset, and obviously helping, what they've been doing now is helping, cover a lot more of the expenses and sort of help mitigate the cost of it all, which is the most important thing. But again, like, start making connections with people, brands, something you care about. Maybe it's not the time, because ultimately, especially large brands, they're going to look at you as an ROI case, right? They're going to do a financial evaluation of, does this make sense to give you money? It's not going to be like a charity in a lot of cases. So again, if they say no now, well, at least you put yourself on the radar, at least there's someone you can reach back out to when, you think that you're having the success that warrants another visit. But again, like, having an agent, I felt very lucky that I knew the sport really well and working with the ski athletes, because I know it's such an intimate, unique sport too, right? So I could understand where they were, how they were feeling about, went through tons of injuries with them, all that. Like, I think that's the type of stuff too, where I wish there was more agents working with ski athletes, because of not just the commercial making more money and being that person, but just like having a sort of outside friend, mentor, something that's not your coach, that's not the US ski team, that's not your parents. That's like a really cool part of an agent if they do it right, and something I really enjoyed sort of exploring that relationship with the athlete.
Yeah. And if we were to extend sort of what we've been talking about, which has been focused predominantly on ski racers, to park and pipe athletes or free skiers, the slope style, big air, like all those kind of other, they're all winter sports. But you mentioned alpine ski racing is perhaps grabbing a large quantity of eyeballs. I think some of these other things do as well, but I imagine they face the same, if not greater, challenges in that respect in terms of the visibility of these sports as not being as great as alpine ski racing, or correct me if I'm wrong.
So I don't know. I think I was around Milan, we had so many good stories. It's like kind of storytelling too, right? So many good stories going into kind of the ski discipline in general. Obviously Lindsay, which was unfortunate at the end. Michaela's, Lindsay was really unfortunate because it was just so fascinating and fun to watch. And then Michaela's redemption was everything. And then you had on the alpine side, or the free skiing side of things, the Eileen Gu of it all. She's the highest paid female athlete in the world.
I'm sorry, say that again.
Eileen Gu is the highest paid female athlete in the world.
I was not aware of that, but okay.
Well, I think that is because now, active, right? I think Serena is probably, maybe don't quote me on that, but she's up there. I know for a fact she's top 5.
Okay. Yeah, because I would think female tennis players would be super high.
Definitely the highest paid Olympian.
Okay.
Maybe Alyssa Liu will now, but good storytelling. People the amount of people around me, and I'm out of the agency stuff now. I'm in hockey, which is, it's so funny now being part of the NHL's return to the Olympics, because they were gone for 12 years. And during our Olympic cycles, the NHL not being in the Olympics was truly a huge void for us, because they're a huge pull for audience, right? Everyone's I want to see Sidney Crosby do the golden goal again. And so they're kind of the big brother of it all. And we're, seeing them back with, I would say, US, I'd say skiing is this probably the second biggest NGB in the Olympics, was really fascinating. The amount of people who still wanted to see what happened with Michaela and Lindsay versus the, men's hockey team. It's built up a great equity in terms of that. And the US ski, there's, I saw the publishing of their revenue for the year, and it's amazing. There's no NGB. They're becoming the model for other NGBs to follow in terms of how do we commercialize, how do we, actually bring in more from these events and sort of continue the momentum. Which makes me proud too, because
that's good. Yeah, no, when I had Sophie Goldschmidt on she was the first episode this season, and we talked about that. Bringing in partners and how you monetize the sport. Right. And I know there's more to come.
Yeah, she's got an incredible mind for it, and the amount of people in the sports industry that they find out I'm a skier, they're like, oh, you must know Sophie, and she's brought a lot of great thinking to the federation.
Yeah, they're doing great. They're adding brands to the coat, and it's nice to see Duncan as an East Coast person.
Iconic.
Yes. I have to go down to the local shop and get a coffee and a jelly donut.
Right, totally.
In a last few minutes, you've moved on to the NHL Players Association. Working with the union, right? That's basically what it is. I say, A, what are you doing? And B, having been a professional athlete in the skiing context, are there parallels or is it radically different? One's a individual sport, the other is a team sport. One has a big league, the other FIS is something else.
Yeah. No, so I'm just 2 minutes in, or sorry, 2 minutes. Yeah, that's what it feels like. 2 months.
We'll say 2 minutes. It doesn't matter.
The blur of it all, because I joined right before the Olympics, and I was it's been incredible. I'm doing business development, so I'm on the commercial arm of it. I'm not a lawyer, even though I always thought I got my MBA. So I'm joining kind of a new created biz dev role, which is operating a very unique sort of myriad of capacities to help leverage our commercial opportunities with our 750 players. So ultimately, the union, we represent only current NHL players. It's about 750. We obviously do the meat and potatoes, which is help them negotiate the CBA, help conversation with the league, and find balance with the owners. But we also have a massive commercial arm, which is doing the licensing agreement for the jerseys and for basically everything that we see licensed with player NIL. We also do a lot of, obviously the sponsorship stuff, which is a little more close to home from my time as an agent. And then, we do really unique venture deals. We do a lot of athlete services. We do a lot of philanthropy. It's really cool. A union never came across my radar because skiers are not in a union, right? None of the athletes I worked for were in unions, and coming in and seeing sort of what the mandate of a union has been really a good alignment with me. We want to create sustainability for the players. We want to take care of them. We want to make their time as an athlete and their families too. A lot of it is that too. It's just like health benefits. It's like the stuff that you maybe take for granted a bit. Just helping them maximize that is really, it's a really fun push to be a part of.
And having been a former, pro athlete, does that, at least give you some cred with folks, or how does that, or is that really just an afterthought?
Yeah, I'm still trying to like wager that one out, because the hockey world is very, it's a lot of people coming from hockey, obviously, and I knew that going into like, the conversations with the team and whatever. And it's funny, I say my dad was a hockey player. My grandfather actually was at the first 1954 Cortina games playing hockey. So I'm like, I have that, like, and his name was also Hig. So I'm like, I'm one of you. But it's fun because there's a lot of adjacencies to like, different form of like of H2O, but also just so unique. Like you said, it it kind of is a lot of what we just talked about, like the individualness of skiing that can actually make it really cutthroat, honestly. And I'm kind of starting to see this now working with in a much larger sport, with a union, a team sport. I think of all the team sports, hockey is probably the most like meritocratic. Like it's the group. It's for me. It's for us, not for me. It's very connected, and everything kind of moves together in very incremental ways. Whereas being a skier, and certainly my journey, was kind of just like, oh my God, how am I going to survive another day? And like, shit, I need to beat the guy that I'm sharing the room with, because they're, like, it's a really different mindset. And like, I think that's like maybe something that I'm like, look, like, again, no regrets, but I'm like, oh, maybe a team sport feels a lot more relaxing than the world I come from.
I think there's something to be said about that. I mean, usually team sports, you're playing against one other team, so the outcome is binary. You either won or you lost.
Yep.
As opposed to being one of, if it's a full fist field, 140 athletes, and you either won or you're one of 139 losers.
Yeah.
So not quite as binary. And if you do, not perform up to what you wanted to, there's always a team around you to support you, whereas the individual sports are challenging.
Yeah. It's much harder. Like culture building it's tougher with an individual sport like skiing. Again, it's something that I know like it's talked a lot about more as an intentional effort, but you see that I've seen that in hockey. Like it's a much more endemic part of the whole system. It's like this is who we are as people. This is the way we kind of want to move together. This is how we see it. Like it's very collective, and it's honestly refreshing.
That's good to hear.
Yeah.
Well, listen, thank you. Is there anything else you wanted to plug before we say goodbye?
No, I mean, what's going on with Colorado Winter 2026? This is the first year I actually bought an Icon pass, because I wanted to bring my daughter skiing, and I'm like, what's happening? But at the same time, I'm skiing with her between my legs and on, edgy wedgies, so it doesn't really matter. But dang,
Yeah.
I'm sorry for all my Coloradans out there. Vermont is winning this year.
Vermont has won the snow totals, that's for sure.
Yeah.
No, it's a shame. I wish Colorado and Utah, and frankly the West in general, got more snow, and hopefully they do in the near future.
Yeah, it'll come when the mountain closes, as expected.
Yeah. Well, listen, Hig, I really appreciate you joining me today. It's been educational for me to say, and enjoyable. It really had a great time chatting with you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. It's really fun to be talking skiing.
Yeah, it's always fun to talk skiing. That's why I started the podcast. So
it's great. I love it. And I love the people you brought on, a lot of good friends and people I love hearing the stories. So thank you.
You are most welcome.
Yeah.
Take care.
That was Hig Roberts. Really thoughtful perspective on life inside and beyond the World Cup. If you enjoyed this conversation, please follow or subscribe to Fresh Corduroy on your preferred platform, and share this episode with someone who loves skiing or sport more broadly. You can also find us on Instagram at Fresh Corduroy Podcast for clips and news. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.